Welcome to the February episode of Meet the Authors. I'm Georgia Lash, and you heard right. I said Meet the Authors. This month you'll hear from 4 authors as diverse as the potpourri category in Jeopardy! Let's start with our visit from author-poet Doug Snelson. This was a return visit for Doug. He's always entertaining, and he's a master at wordsmithing daily life occurrences. On this visit, Doug turns pickleball into poetry in his latest publication. Take a listen. Doug, welcome back to Meet the Author. Now, of all the authors I sit with, I have to say, you're the only one who has so far combined poetry with pickleball. So, I'm going to let you tell our viewers about the premise of Pickleball Poetry, your newest release.
Well, thank you very much, Georgia. A pleasure to be here. This book came about 2 summers ago after playing pickleball in the morning, and I was on the beach, and the way I write, something comes to me, and I say to myself, what am I going to write about? And I thought, I started scribbling in my notebook, and I realized I'd played pickleball that morning, and I thought, well, what would it be like to write something about pickleball? And there's a term called pickled, which is you win the game 11-0. And I thought, what would that look like in some fun rhyming verse? And so I started to write it, not without any expectations, and it made me happy. And because it made me happy, I thought, I'm on to something for myself. And that's when I write. I write to make myself happy, and with the hope that I'll be able to connect to other people.
So you didn't get pickled on this one then?
Oh,
okay.
I have been pickled.
Now,
I have been pickled.
Pickled is one of your titles, but you have 32 poems in here.
Yes.
So give us just a couple of the fun favorite titles that you've got in here.
Okay, they're all fun. They're all favorite. And
like children.
For all people who play pickleball, hopefully they'll relate to a number of them. It starts with pickled, and there's a term called third shot drop, where it's the third shot and you just want to gently get it over the net to position the opponent in an uncomfortable way. So there's a poem there. There's one called hydration, because we all get very sweaty and we need electrolytes, and that's a lot of fun.
So it's a fitness guidebook too.
Well, it's techniques, it's fun, it's emotion. It's all those things that I experience, not just playing pickleball, but the people around. So, for example, one poem in here is called The Jerk. And that jerk is an individual who likes to give people advice and may give that advice without being asked. And then there is a poem in here called She Hears the TV Clicking, which was something that I wrote after my wife, who had known nothing about pickleball, heard this ball on the TV, and she said, "What is that? What are you looking at? What are you listening to?" Oh. And so I wrote about, here's someone who knows nothing about pickleball. She hears the TV clicking, and what did that mean? And so that's some of the emotions. It's the whole gamut.
Okay, now you've got this great pickleball vernacular here, and that has seemed to make this book very successful. I understand that this is one of your most successful works, rapidly selling at the onset, the release of the book, internationally.
Yes.
Multi-countries, as I've read.
Yep.
So what do you attribute these results to?
Well, one of the things that you said, mixing poetry and pickleball, what is that? Well, it's fun. First of all, it's fun. But I think there are people who are looking just very interested in all aspects of what pickleball is all about. And sometimes people can get a little bit serious about it, though most people, the vast majority of people, will say they play pickleball because it's fun. I attribute to the success of this particular book because it's for adults. It's a nice little gift for people. There are, I mean, the numbers just keep on increasing. Well over 50 million people that have played pickleball in the United States
Yeah.
and around the world. So I think that's a wonderful, wonderful opportunity for me because it's still relatively new.
Mm. Well, I think you've capitalized on a great idea, and thanks for that success, I'm sure, that you're feeling. But you're also well recognized in the world of children's literacy, and you've written 3 children's books.
Yes, thank you.
So is there anything more coming as we look at these beautiful books here?
Well, I have written a number of drafts of other ideas, and I have actually written a few more books that my editor is taking a look at. So I hope to have something else out within the year, but who knows? It takes time and patience.
Well, I'm already ready for that next interview then. But again, as we look, at your books, I understand that you are quoted as saying, "I guarantee readers will have a smile with my books. And if they don't, I'll refund their money."
Yes.
So I have to ask, what's your secret to keeping those refunds away?
Well, there is no secret, but that is not just you read the book and you better smile or you get your money back, but I'm talking about lifelong refund here. So there isn't any pickleball poet, any pickleball player, or someone who I think even may has a sense of what pickleball is about, who couldn't pick this up and find something that makes them smile. And if it makes me smile, and people that I know who play pickleball, and I had 2 people who, one was a certified referee, another one a certified trainer. The illustrator is a pickleball player who was a former contributing illustrator to the New York Times. They all smiled, and they continue to smile, and I haven't had to pay anybody anything. So.
Well, just your titles. I mean, come on. And just the title of the book, Pickleball Poetry. So I'm going to just ask you one more question then. Mm-hmm. With all this talent that you have, is your talent coming easier as a writer of poetry or playing pickleball?
Well, first of all, thank you for suggesting that I'm talented. That's really a nice compliment. I think when an author or someone writes something and they write from their heart, their mind, and their soul, and they have an opportunity to connect with a person who picks up the words that you've written, that is the ultimate success. When it comes to playing pickleball or writing, I'm thinking of a quote from T.S. Eliot.
Woo!
All right, here we go. So he wrote, and I believe this is exactly what he wrote because it's been changed a number of times. I went back to look at it. He said, we shall never cease from exploration. And at the end of our exploration, we will arrive at a place where we began, knowing it for the first time. And to me, when I write, I believe, at least the writers that I know, you're never happy, never really happy. You could always have changed something, changed a rhythm, changed a word, tried to define it a little bit better. Jack Kerouac once said, in fact, it's in the very beginning of the book, he wrote, one day I will find the right words and they will be simple. And notice he didn't say, I found the right words and they will be simple, because he won all kinds of journalism awards, Pulitzer Prize for journalism. It's one day I will find the right words and they will be simple. T.S. Eliot's point is you write and you learn something about what you've written, and then hopefully at some point you have to cut it off and move on. With pickleball, you learn a shot, and then as your skill levels improve, you realize, gee, there are other things I can learn. My exploration continues. That's why pickleball has all these various skill levels that you can achieve. And oftentimes you'll hit a skill level and then you'll forget something that you learned that brought you there. So it's an ongoing process. So both pickleball and writing are very, very difficult. Long way to answer your simple question.
So I'll be trying neither then.
Oh, no. I think I encourage, well, pickleball is and this isn't my quote, but it's well known. Pickleball is an easy game to learn. So I encourage you to learn. I encourage everyone to learn how to play pickleball. But it is a difficult game to master. So it depends on how far you want to go, but it'll make you happy for sure.
Okay, that sounds good. Why don't we finish up with you picking one of your poems to share with our viewers?
All right. Well, what I've chosen is the very last poem in the book, and it's called "And Paddle Click," and that the paddle click is something that all pickleball players can relate to. It's the very end of the game, whether you win, whether you lose. It's about sportsmanship. You click the paddle and you move on to the next game. So let me read that. This is called, and it's short. All these poems are short. And Paddle Click. A word about the truth we all call sportsmanship. No need to be uncouth. Be slow to let your inside slip. Treat with respect. They did their best. Good shot. Good try. Play fair. What troubles you should lie to rest. A good sport means you care. It's just a game. You win, you lose. Play hard, play kind, be in the thick. Play for the love, avoid the blues. End with a smile and paddle click.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Always looking forward to seeing what's coming next from Doug Snelson.
Really appreciate it, Georgia. Thank you so much.
A unique opportunity was presented to meet the author. The latest event brought a panel of 6 authors to present their work from the book Short Story America, Volume 7. I enjoyed a sit-down with one of its authors who served as our Master of Ceremonies for the presentation. John MacIlroy gave us the backstory as to how this work of 35 short stories originated and how these writers have bonded together. John, this evening you've brought us Short Story America, Volume 7. Now, let's start with the quote that I heard describing this book, and that is, reading Short Story America is like opening a window on a blooming spring garden after a long, cold winter. Whew, that's quite a description. How do you describe Short Story America?
That is a great description, and I think that came from a gentleman named Jim Dodson. And some of our writers and readers might recognize him as the editor of the acclaimed O. Henry magazine, which has really featured short story writers for years. So I'm not going to try to improve on that. I would add the Short Story America anthology series has had about a 10-year run now. The first edition, which was created by the editor and founder, T.D. Tim Johnston, out of Beaufort, kicked off, I believe, in 2011. And Volume 7, which came out in 2022, looks like that might be the last edition for a while. We may have to work with Tim on that. I think what people would like to know, it's all original works in each volume, and it's an eclectic collection. I don't want to get too wonky, but that means that there's no particular genre, no particular theme. It's not linked stories with place or character. As you said, it's a garden of possibilities, and they're marvelous. And the 6 writers who are here tonight have all appeared in 1 or 2 volumes of Short Story America.
Now, there are 35 stories in this volume, and you mentioned that there are a variety of genres. Can you give us some examples?
Oh gosh, I'd like to say I've read all 35, and I have, but it's been a bit of time. I think what will happen tonight is we'll have a sampling of 6 of those stories, and they really do run the gamut. I'm not quite sure which stories our readers will choose, but I know in one case we've got a writer that may offer up a really nifty environmental science fiction type story. The story that I have on there is a coming-of-age story. Some are first person, some are other narrative voices. So it'll be kind of a surprise for me too today. So that makes it fun for me as well as the audience.
Let's get a glimpse at one of the stories. Dataw resident Ginny Hall Apicella shared excerpts from A Practical Woman, her story contribution from Short Story America.
On April 9, 1866, 1 year to the day since Lee's surrender at Appomattox Courthouse, Margaret Foster, hearing the cows bellowing and the horses frantic neighing, hurried to the bar, slid the heavy door open, and saw her son, Abel, her favorite son, dead and hanging from a joist. She collapsed to her knees. "Lord God, Jesus, no, no," she screamed. She clapped her hands over her ears to ward off the wail of her despair. Could it have been just months ago when she had glimpsed her boy's slow-footed trudge up the road, past the pasture and the red-leaf sugar maple? He was not marching, but placing one boot in front of the next at a reluctant pace. There were no crowds shouting her praise, only Margaret, who dropped her pail and splashed through the creek, never minding the bridge a few yards beyond. She crushed Abel to herself in an embrace that only a mother or a lover was allowed. Pushing him to arm's length, she gave him her full regard. She examined his gaunt face, his full beard. She knew that a razor had never touched his cheeks before he left. Now his eyes were as empty as his sleeve, pinned up to the shoulder of a faded, patched Union jacket. This was not the vigorous, fanciful boy she had permitted to lead the 2nd Vermont Volunteers. Margaret had thought it was not their fight, but Henry, her husband, and the boy's father had insisted. He banged his fist on the worn pine table. His sons, Isaac and Abel, would fight to keep the Union intact. Yes, indeed, they would rid the country of the abomination of slavery. God would once more hold the Union in his sacred palm when the black man was free. Henry Foster was an abolitionist like his Vermont neighbors. When Garrett Smith or William Lloyd Garrison came to speak nearby, they gathered to hear him and shout assent. The truth was, most of those farmers had little knowledge of slavery and had scarce seen an African man, woman, or child, unless they had traveled to Brattleboro or Boston for a new plow or a broad church suit. While Henry was an abolitionist, Margaret was a practical woman who would help Henry with the spring planting if his sons were gone, who would guide the plow through the hard scrabble fields, who would fell the red oak and Dead Horse Creek. She and her daughter Letty might help, but though willing, they lacked the brawn of Isaac and Abel. "I'll manage," insisted Henry. He might hire one of the Hitchcock boys, yet those boys volunteered too, looking for adventure, bugles, and admiring female eyes. Mr. Lincoln had asked for 90 days, and his boys were just the ones to do it. By autumn, he pronounced, they would be home, and all would be well with the house undivided. Henry could not have seen that those 90 days would become a 3-year enlistment, and that he would be felled not by a mini ball or a horse's hoof, but by a fall fever. Henry called. He sweated. His body shook with the chills. Margaret piled him with quilts and placed a mustard plaster on his chest. She supported his head while he poured willow bark tea down his throat. The fever didn't break. She and Letty sat at the bedside, applying cool compresses to his brow. Dr. Melbourne shook his head, plucked his tongue, and remarked, "His lungs are back. It'll be done, but wait." They waited. They prayed. 2 weeks later, Margaret, Letty, and Henrietta Hitchcock laid his dead body on the warm kitchen table. They bathed him and dressed him in his Sunday suit. George Hitchcock built a pine box and dug a hole by the Norwegian spruce on the hill near the graves of the three foster babies who never reached their first birthday. Beyond her cries, Margaret heard the throaty mewing of Maisie the cow and the frantic neighing of the plow horse. Margaret, a capable woman, needed to stop her lament. She needed to get her dead boy down and bury him proper. She wasn't a woman given to asking for help. She was efficient and determined. She never shook to duty. First, she must deal with Maisie, a cow, hours beyond her milking.
Beaufort author and creative writing instructor Estelle Ford Williamson joined the panel as a return author to Sun City. She's been here with her novel Rising Fawn, and on this evening shared her contribution to Short Story America in a previous edition, Volume 6.
Began the strains of Jill's music with penny whistle and guitar played in her head. Fragments of widening sky ran through her mind as she looked down in the chasm between the mountains. Green hills gently rose up through the valley, partially screening the two highways, an interstate and a national road. Railroad tracks roughly parallel the highways, and between the tracks and highways lay a long, swinging creek, almost hidden by groves of trees and small ridges. In that particular area, Lookout Mountain travels quite a ways from Chattanooga through northwest Georgia and into Alabama. It's a very long mountain, and between Sand Mountain and Lookout Mountain, it's like there's a big lightning bolt that went through the valley. So that's the valley she's overlooking, about 2,000 above the valley floor, 2,000 feet above the valley floor. How far the descendants of those immigrants had come from their home countries, Claire reflected, looking down from her perch. But then her own dilemma raced through her mind. Was this progress to be rooted out of her home and sent to scramble for a living up in the rocky soil of her ancestors' homes? Surely she'd come farther than this. Her husband got suspicious when the second mortgage fraud hit, and she thought he, actually before all this happened, she thought he kind of stepping out on her. He was doing strange things. So when he says, "You need to leave the house," she runs to an attorney. The attorney says, "I need $4,000. She's been like, $4,000, and she just goes into a panic attack. So she leaves, and she ends up in this particular place where, by some circumstance, she finds that her mother owns this place. So she's up there, mother's in Semi-Thumb State back in Atlanta. So she's no way of communicating about this mysterious property which she owned. So she's up there on this rock. The piece of the mountain rock was broken by a door, as a door slapped in the distance. Within a few minutes, she heard trumping on long grasses and looked up to see Gordon coming up to her perch with the tangled grasses and weeds, guitar held high. "Hey, I thought I'd come join you," he said. And he sits down and starts playing his guitar and says, "Mind if I bore you with some John Denver?" "Go ahead, bore me. Things could be worse," she laughed. This is a guy who had been at the program the night before, and he's her neighbor. Gordon began playing Rocky Mountain High and went on to thank God on the country floor. "Now I'll do some Bill Monroe," he said, and launched into the Blue Moon of Kentucky. Claire enjoyed the music and stopped thinking about anything else. It was a treat to sit on a mountain any summer afternoon this side of the mountain, being serenaded. She couldn't think of a time she'd enjoyed music more. "Makes you feel like you belong in things," to start talking. She said, "Tell me about Jill and Jean and their music." Once Gordon finished, "It's eerie music. Is that what people coming to the mountains knew? It's Celtic in its roots. Probably predates the pioneers by a few centuries, like the Celtic stories. The musical verses were long and wandering, following many paths, not neat and with rhymes and refrains like we have in the ballads and tunes we play today. But it's an influence on our music now. Brooding melodies, sorrowful stories. But the stories probably had more heroines than our stories do. The Irish had strong women as well as strong men. I didn't know that. I don't know a lot about it, but Jill told me a little bit about the culture. Amazing, I'm part Irish Catholic, this is Claire talking, and part Italian, and I know very little about either culture. I guess we're all like that. I know very little about my own family, this is really talking. Didn't really want to know. There's a lot of alcohol. So I just grab other people's traditions, like building up. Well, tell me more about your lost love. This is Gordon again talking about Claire. She told him about Billy and the financial problems that are missing him and wanting the separation to be over. As she talked, a Russian feeling passed over her heart, and a stone about half the size of the one they sat on seemed to press down on her chest. For sure, she told Gordon, she was making it with someone now because she'd been gone for 3 days. She saw Gordon wince at that, but he said nothing. Have you tried calling him from here? He pulled his legs in, sat yoga-like, looking at her eyes showing concern. I can't make a stupid phone call without driving to the edge of the canyon around here, she cried. I go to town down below and all I get are middle-aged women suspicious of me making sure I don't stay too long. She snuffled, wishing she had a tissue. Then I go to the graveyard and find my grandfather lying there next to a strange woman and another man. Hey, that's bad, Gordon laughed, rubbing her shoulder. Quick, tell me more. I feel a song coming on. That would make a great story. What does it matter who lives in the graveyard? Gordon continued. You're here. You have hopes and dreams and you contribute to the world. Who cares what happened in the last century? Who cares what happened before in your marriage? It can change. The important thing is to keep acting like you're the stable point in the universe. Every little disappointment, every little bend in the road can throw you off unless you become your own compass. She basically says, so you gonna hear something crazy? Sure. I'm a life coach. I'm supposed to have all the answers. Gordon laughed. The life coach, what a hoot. What you tell me though is that's no interesting twist is what I tell people in my workshops. I like that stable point in the universe. I'm going to use that in my workshops. A life coach, that's great. I'm going to use that, he said. He waved his arm over the view below him. Invite Willie up here. If you can't get him to fall back in love with you on this rock, there is absolutely no hope. On the other hand, there might be hope, and then you're really in trouble, because then you both move up here and be badass neighbors, causing you cussing the local folks. They both laugh, Claire lipped. Tears flow, let the afternoon light ends. Take care of something in class.
I hope this energizes your reading wish list. Thanks to our authors for sharing their time and talent with us. Our appreciation extends to Denise Damling of Sun City Lifestyles Department for coordinating these monthly Meet the Author events. We meet at Riverbend at 6 p.m., but check City Life or the Sun City website for dates. I know I'll be there with our Sun City TV crew to meet the authors and bring their stories to you. You'll find our author interviews and excerpts of the presentations in our Meet the Author SCTV specials shown on cable and on our SCTV YouTube station.